You're listening to Season 11 of Mobile Suit Breakdown, a weekly podcast covering the entirety of sci-fi mega franchise Mobile Suit Gundam from 1979 to today.
This is episode 11.21, The Death Army Strikes Back, and we're your hosts. I'm Tom, a longtime Gundam fan, and I almost can't believe it, but the summer of Lydia is coming to a close. The final episode of The Disappearances of Lydia Fontaine, Season 1, the audio drama that I wrote, comes out on August 16th, which is still the future for me, but will already have happened for most of you listening to this. If you've been holding off, waiting for the series to be in a finished, bingeable state, then now is the time. Go listen to all 10 episodes, and tell your friends while you're at it.
And I'm Nina, new to G Gundam, and now imagining Schwartzbruder as a special kind of sports therapist who constructs elaborate plots designed to result in important epiphanies.
I'd watch that show.
As an ad-free independent podcast, Mobile Suit Breakdown relies on our generally jocular, jovial, and jolly, yet still judicious, paying subscribers. Thank you all for keeping us Genki. Don't you want to join them in the best Discord community on the internet? That and still more delights await you if you become a paying subscriber at GundamPodcast.com/Patreon. Also, weeks when no one new joins make us sad. Do you want to make us sad?
This week, we are covering G Gundam Episode 21, Kessho Semaru, Taimurimu to Mika Mae, or The Finals Are Getting Closer, the time limit is 3 days, originally broadcast on September 9th, 1994. The episode credits this week come with a fascinating mystery. Both the storyboard artist and episode director are new to the production. The latter is Mori Kunihiro, a former production assistant on Victory Gundam and 0083 Stardust Memory, now being given his first opportunity to step up to episode director. He must have made a good impression because he has gotten regular work as an episode director on Gundam projects ever since. And he's also been a staple on Tomino's later projects, including Brain-Powered, Turn A Gundam, Overman King Gainer, and Reconquista in G. As for the storyboards, and the mystery, this is the first of 6 episodes credited to Inoue Soji. But Inoue Soji has only one other credit, and is almost certainly a pseudonym for a well-known animator who did not want his association with the project to be publicly known. Inoue's other credit is for the storyboards on a single episode of the 2003 erotic supernatural harem show Lime Iro Senkitan, or Lime-Colored History of War, set during the Russo-Japanese War. Japanese fans have speculated about Inoue Soji's real identity ever since, with various possible names being batted around. The evidence is entirely circumstantial, but both G Gundam and Lime Iro Senkitan were directed by men who had previously worked as storyboard artists and episode directors on Heavy Metal Elgaim, Combat Mecha Zabungle, and Ora Battler Dunbine. In other words, they were both protégés of one Tomino Yoshiyuki. On top of that, there's long been a rumor on the Japanese side of the fandom that Tomino was involved in the production of G somehow. He regularly uses pseudonyms for his work, and has at least 8 different ones that I know of, and both productions in 1994 and 2003 occurred during periods when he would not have been working on anything else. Before Gundam secured his reputation as a director, Tomino was best known as a gun-for-hire storyboard artist, and right around this time, in 1992, he did contribute storyboards for the opening of the show Mama is a Fourth Grader, which was directed by a different Dunbine and Elgaim alum. Add to that the fact that this week's episode was the directorial debut of another of Tomino's protégés, and it starts to look a lot like the Old Master, an infamous micromanager who could never let things go, might have dropped by in disguise to help a few of his disciples overcome a particularly thorny challenge. This is all just a theory based on rumor and circumstantial evidence, but as rumors about Tomino go, I would call this one more plausible than most.
Master Asia, you leave those boys alone.
Like I said, I don't know if it's true, but I hope it is. And now, the play-by-play.
I just don't know what to do about my Gundam fighter. He used to be so enthusiastic about training for the Gundam fight, but now the finals are approaching and he just stands around, staring into the distance, saying things like, "This burning sensation, just what could it be?" And, "My rival is out there, I'm sure of it." I keep telling him that if we don't leave for Neo Hong Kong soon, we'll be disqualified, but he won't budge. Just this morning he told me he wants to go off by himself and train in a cave.
I was having the same problem with my Gundam fighter, so I asked my doctor, mechanic, bodyguard, driver, strategist, engineer, girlfriend, coach, trip sitter, and childhood friend, and she said it sounded like my Gundam fighter was experiencing crest entanglement.
Crest entanglement? What's that?
Crest entanglement is a rare but serious condition which can affect Gundam fighters and their destined rivals, causing them to feel each other's pain. If your Gundam fighter recently inherited a mystical crest denoting membership in an ancient and secretive order, he could be at risk of developing crest entanglement. Early symptoms include glowing, lethargy, disinterest in fighting, excessive interest in fighting, sweating, dry mouth, night terrors, lingering in remote locations, speaking in cryptic phrases, and disobeying orders. If left untreated, crest entanglement can lead to Gundam fighters engaging in risky behavior, putting themselves, their mobile fighters, and their nation's prospects in peril. In extreme cases, a Gundam fighter might even form a spontaneous alliance with his 3 closest frenemies, working together and sacrificing themselves, one by one, to hold off approaching waves of Death Army, Death Birdie, and Death Navy mobile suits, all to deliver their stranded crestmate's mobile fighter in time for the climactic showdown with his former master.
Wow. Wait, that seems like a weirdly specific symptom.
Thankfully, now there's Shuffle-X.
How many people actually have this disease? Did you spend $1 billion of my company's G dollars developing a drug only 5 people are ever going to need?
Shuffle-X is the first crest-focused treatment specifically engineered to provide rapid relief from crest entanglement without damaging the body's natural martial arts key particles.
Why are we even making an ad for this? I have the total addressable market on speed dial.
Shuffle-X. Take back control of your Gundam fighter.
We are not paying you for this.
I'm going to dust off an old classic here. I think it's going to be a short episode this week.
Have you ever been right about that? Even once have you been right when you've said you thought it was going to be a short episode?
I don't know.
It just feels like tempting Providence.
I just didn't think there was that much to talk about this week. I would be very pleased to be wrong. But it's an episode with a lot of fighting in it, and while I enjoyed watching it, what is there to say?
I think we could fill up a whole talkback just discussing these new Gundam reveals.
Yes, Gundams from several nations are on the move. Gundams from many countries will gather.
Okay, first, before we get into that, some additional detail about the Gundam fight itself, its duration, its scope.
More time has passed since the start of the show than you might expect.
Yeah, point to the first. Apparently the Gundam fight lasts a year. 11 months have elapsed since it began.
That's a lot of months.
That's a long time.
Way more months than I would have thought. But then in this episode, we find that it's been at least 2 weeks since the last episode. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of time is passing. How long have Domon and Rain been in the Highlands?
Months, I'm sure. And then the finals are held. Well, first, there are finals. It's not just keep fighting amongst yourselves until only one of you is left. And initially, when they discussed that the finals were going to be held in Neo Hong Kong, and there's this whole discussion of like, why aren't certain fighters already there? They could be disqualified. I thought it was going to be like in Battle Royale. I assume it's the same in the book and the movie. You will all be scandalized to hear, I have only read the book. I have never seen the movie adaptation of Battle Royale.
Don't worry, I've got you covered. I have only seen the movie.
The book is fantastic, by the way, if anybody wants to read it.
I think the movie is really good, too.
One of those books where I would start to feel dizzy while I was reading, and I would realize it was because I was holding my breath. But anyway, so the thing is, in Battle Royale, they put all these kids on an island and they're making them fight to the last kid standing. In order to prevent the kids just like holing up in a place of safety, they have gridded the island and they progressively take, chunks of this territory and say, this chunk of territory will become off limits in an hour. And if you're in there, the little collar thing we made you wear will kill you. It makes sense if you're starting in a battle royale, free-for-all type fight, that as you get fewer and fewer people participating, you shrink the area to force the remaining people into closer proximity to each other. Tom let slip that actually the finals of the Gundam fight are more of a classic tournament structure. And so it's not anything as exciting as what I was imagining.
Let slip. I was just trying to prevent you from spending a bunch of time on a fruitless research avenue. But yeah, at least the first 11 months of the Gundam fight are a survival kind of elimination process. You just got to get through it. You got to make it to the end. As we learned just last episode, you can decline a fight. You don't have to participate in the fights. So what is the incentive for a country to participate in this survival stage at all? Why not just hang out, wait for the finals to arrive?
I suppose if you have any rivals who you think you can eliminate before the tournament stage, there might be a benefit to that. But
yeah, but then you could just let them get to the tournament and hope that they'll take out some of your other rivals.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Just like all of the Shuffle Alliance showing up, claiming to want to duke things out amongst themselves before the finals begin, which logically doesn't make any sense because, you know, they'll still have to fight each other in the finals and they're risking disqualification by not going to Neo Hong Kong now. It becomes very clear that this is a rationalization, but we'll get to that later on. First,
they just want to hang out with their bros.
Yeah. In the opening narration, they show us a whole bunch of the remaining fighters, the ones who have made it to the finals. Neo Grease's Zeus Gundam. Love the chariot, the wings, the beard. This is a cool Gundam. Neo Holland's Nether Gundam, which I'm sorry to tell you was spoiled for me long ago. I think years ago I saw the Windmill Gundam, the Nether Gundam.
Did you believe it was real?
Yes. Neo Norway's Viking Gundam, which appears to be on a dragon boat, but also that its shoulder pauldrons look like the prow of a dragon boat. It's a little weird.
I think it might be part of the dragon boat.
Interesting.
I mean, I guess they knew that the finals were going to be in Neo Hong Kong. Presumably the finals are hosted by whichever country won last time. So they knew it was going to be, you know, around the islands and they could deploy this aquatic mobile fighter. But it's a big risk to take.
I thought this was one of the weaker ones that they showed us. And I have some serious problems with Neo Spade's Matador Gundam.
I kind of thought you might.
Are they aware that the Matador is the bullfighter, not the bull?
Just because it's dressed like a bull doesn't mean it can't fight bulls.
It's not even quote-unquote dressed like a bull. The chest is a bull face, but then the head also has bull horns. Of these new Gundams that are introduced this episode, the Zeus Gundam, definitely my favorite. And I find myself mildly insulted by the dull design of Neo Spain's Matador Gundam.
You can cry into the World Cup trophy.
Both World Cup trophies.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned earlier the Shuffle Alliance, despite their rationalizations and excuses, just want to hang out with their bro.
Although Chibody does a little bit of token, like, we should leave him behind. He's caused us nothing but trouble.
I'm not sure it is token. To the extent that this show has a message or messages, a lot of that message has to do with managing your feelings and your relationships, your connections to other people as a young man. And when Chibody is venting that Domon has put them through a lot and that he's always getting them into trouble, that is a feeling a person could have about a friend. Like, gosh, this guy, he's always got some drama. He's always dragging us into trouble, you know. But a troublesome friend is still a friend.
But do you think that Chibody seriously, for a moment, really was considering abandoning Domon?
No,
That's what I mean when I say it's a token effort.
but I do believe that Chibody doesn't entirely understand why he doesn't want to abandon Domon.
He doesn't understand his feelings.
He does not understand his feelings of like affection and connection to this other person.
And as the American, he is the one most likely to express the feelings of frustration that they're all experiencing.
Saisaichi, as the youngest and the least likely to have the like, I'm supposed to be a big tough man and not care about anything, just says outright, we're all worrying about Domon. Obviously, the crests that they all now have, them all being members of the Shuffle Alliance, the fact that they in some way are feeling the feelings of the others, like through this connection, that's friendship. Your friend is hurting or scared or worried or something great happens to them, and you feel a bit of that through your connection to them.
The cure to the male loneliness epidemic is for all men to join ancient secret societies, bonded by a semi-mystical link, and to get tattoos on their hands.
You're just reinventing Masonic lodges.
Nina, I've got a great idea. I'm going to fix the world. And I just need you to help me start a cult. I think that's how Fight Club begins.
A lot of lonely men become less lonely. Who can say if it's good or bad?
George, of course, has to come up with an excuse. He can't say he's here for Domon. It has to be because he, as a knight, is obliged to protect the damsel.
Although he's also the one to call out Chibody, saying, well, why are you still here then if Domon is so much trouble?
Why haven't you gone to the bother of creating a plausible excuse for yourself?
The other thing about the show that convinces me that it's really about like young men learning to understand and manage their emotions is Domon's whole arc is basically about that. As a years old adult woman, I find a lot of Domon's arc to feel a little bit ludicrous because he's just so dense about it. But, you know, to a 14-year-old boy, it might have been very compelling. We open with him insisting that to complete his training, he needs to be alone, which hasn't all of his experience up until now proved the opposite of that.
I don't know. People keep bothering him, and he hasn't made the progress in his training that he wanted to make, so clearly it's their fault. If they would just leave him alone for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's not like any of his breakthroughs have happened because of interactions with other people. He's at least gotten far enough to understand that if he wants to control his super mode, he needs to be able to activate it without becoming furiously angry. He doesn't have control over making himself feel that level of anger, so he needs other ways to tap into whatever that is that activates super mode. But as he's looking back at all the times that it has activated, he finds himself completely unable to identify what emotion or emotions have been the triggers. You know, I'm an adult. Generally, when I'm feeling a feeling, I can explain what that feeling is, even if I'm not entirely certain what, like where it came from or why I feel that way.
Sure.
However, this is a thing that children are taught, or sometimes not taught, to do, to identify their own emotions and express those emotions in words.
And not to hang too much weight upon a single line, but he was training with Master Asia for 10 years. He returned a year ago for the Gundam fight and to discover what had happened to his family. He's 20 now, which means that from the age of 9 to 19, he was being raised by Master Asia.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have spent much time getting in touch with his emotions.
Here's the thing, though. That means Master Asia was a bad teacher.
Well, in Master Asia's defense, in defense of the villain of the series, I think you could give a young man excellent emotional education, and he would get to being 20 years old and still really struggle to identify and control those emotions.
But there's a difference between having made the effort and it not having been entirely absorbed yet and not having done it at all. And as we see when Schwartzbruder confronts Domon in the cave, there is a very important emotional and psychological component to fighting. Schwartz engineers this whole confrontation where he has a Gundam and Domon does not, because he needs Domon to be in a situation where he truly believes his death is imminent, that he is going to die, and that he accepts this fact. Because in the moment that Domon accepts, like, oh, I'm going to die now, all of his preoccupations, everything that has been consuming him for months, falls away as an irrelevance. Getting revenge on his parents' behalf, confronting his brother, even taunting from his master, none of that matters. He still hasn't entirely put things together. Rain appears to him in that moment, that his care, dare we say it, his love for Rain still matters in that moment, even when all of these other things fall away. But he experiences this moment of mental clarity and is able to block a Gundam's sword with his rusty katana.
Is it the acceptance of death and the clarity of mind and serenity that comes with it? Is it the focus into that single moment in time? Because when you face death like this, everything that has come up to that point becomes, as you said, irrelevant, and everything that could potentially happen after that point vanishes like the morning mist burned off by the sun. It simply doesn't matter because it's not going to happen. You are going to die. You exist only in this one singular moment. Is it that focus which gives him the strength to block the blade? Or is it the desire to live that comes with seeing Rain in his mind? Is it that his love for Rain is the one thing that endures, the one thing that really matters, the one reason to live on that gives him the strength?
Well, I have a very unsatisfying answer for you, which is that I think it's both.
I feel very unsatisfied by that answer.
Could he have realized his feelings for Rain and accepted them in this way if he hadn't thought he was about to die? Maybe, but maybe it would have taken like 5 years or something. We kind of need him to speed things up.
Ladies, if your man is not recognizing your value, here's one weird trick.
Do not attempt this one weird trick. In this conversation, Schwartzbruder says to Domon a comment about achieving mental serenity. And what he says in Japanese is meikyo shisui, which is a yoji jukugo, a 4-character idiom for like bright mirror, still water. And it means the calm, the stillness, the untroubled surface of a bright mirror or of still water. And is a metaphor for mental serenity and comes out of Taoism, which I'm going to talk about in the research piece. But when Schwartz says to Domon, like, accept that you are about to die, I'm fairly confident this is meant to be a reference to several older martial arts practical and philosophical texts, like the Book of Five Rings or the Hagakure. I will say I do not expect G Gundam to present cohesive philosophical ideas, but the introduction of these texts introduces like an interesting wrinkle and an interesting conflict that has also come up consistently in this series, because those were written for samurai who were the retainers of lords, and their focus tends to be more on being a good retainer than being a good lord, how to be a good retainer to a master. And one of the things they say is that the best warriors have already accepted their deaths. It's as though mentally, psychologically, they are already dead. This means you're not thinking about the future. You are not thinking about the past. You are in this moment now. And you're not thinking about regret or about trying to save yourself. You are thinking about whatever is most important to you. That it gives these men courage and decisiveness of action and mental clarity.
The Hagakure is a really interesting text in this situation because It's written quite late in the development of the samurai class. It's written after the samurai retainers were no longer expected to be soldiers, were no longer really expected to be seen on the battlefield.
And it's a lament of that state of affairs. Like, oh no, this whole warrior class is becoming weak.
And it's an attempt to pass down the received philosophy and wisdom of this warrior class and preserve it as the children and grandchildren of those men became administrators. It's designed to take this warrior philosophy and make it applicable to other fields of endeavor. It's sort of an early example of the texts that will eventually apply
Bushido thinking to being an office worker.
Exactly. I was trying to put the appropriate amount of scare quotes around Bushido, but to try to make the salaryman of the 1980s think of himself as a modern day samurai.
The conflict that I see rising again and again here, these books tend to take a very sort of Confucian position on filial piety, which is that as a retainer, your utmost good is to serve your lord in all things, and that as long as the things you do are in service to your lord, you really can't go wrong. And yet again this episode, we have Domon insisting, even as someone else is telling him we need to work together, he's insisting on, no, this is my battle, I won't involve anyone else. Partially because he is fixated on this element of well, it's my brother, it's my family, and therefore my responsibility. But also because if he accepts that he is a member of this group, becomes the most senior member of the Shuffle Alliance, and it really falls on him to take charge, and he does not want that responsibility. Domon wants to be a samurai retainer, or if he can't be a samurai retainer, joyfully and obediently obeying his master, as he was during his brief reunion with Master Asia, he'd rather be a Ronin. He'd rather go rogue.
Yeah, he desperately wants someone to tell him what to do.
Yep.
A worthy lord to follow. And yet, Master Asia offered Domon a place in the Death Army. He has his nation. He is nominally a servant of Neo-Japan. Either one of those he could devote himself to wholeheartedly, put on the blinkers, not think about the implications of what he's doing. But he can't. He sees the evil in the world, he sees his obligations differently. And so, despite the urge, the desire for simplicity, he is compelled to take on responsibility. And the responsibility of choice, of freedom.
And this is a conflict that we all encounter, occasionally, writ small and not terribly consequential, and in many ways, writ large with big philosophical, moral, and political implications. I doubt there are many people in the world who agree with 100% of what their government does, but they don't choose to live as stateless people. Same with churches, same with schools and community groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
We decide what compromises we're willing to make of our own sort of opinions, ideals, and priorities to belong to groups, and whether it's worthwhile to do that. And Argo, being the oldest and most grown up of the whole group, points out that our feelings of conflict, of ambivalence, can be true even when they pull in opposite directions. They're all discussing the fact that they're members of the Shuffle Alliance now, and none of them seem to have really processed what that means for their lives going forward, or what they intend to do with that, beyond the fact that it makes them care about each other and Domon more. Nastasha somewhat angrily reminds them all, they all agreed to fight for their respective countries. They all agreed to be rivals. Argo says, well, they're both true. We're comrades and we're opponents. We have these competing loyalties to our nations and to each other.
I think part of the reason that Domon is reluctant to step up and be the leader of the Shuffle Alliance, the most senior one, as you said, is because he has been disappointed by other leaders. Because he feels the sting of betrayal from Master Asia, and because he recognizes that a lot of that is because Master Asia is pursuing his own selfish goals instead of taking his responsibilities as a master seriously. And as long as Domon has his own selfish goals to pursue, he doesn't feel like he can be a good leader. And so he doesn't deserve to have people following him. And I think this is really about Imagawa. This is about his feelings.
Oh?
As a young professional moving from being a subordinate to being a chief director. About making the transition from a follower to a leader. And feeling not confident in himself, not confident in his abilities to bear the expectations of this entire production.
And the responsibility, being responsible for a whole team like that.
Being responsible for a whole franchise. This is a point in which Gundam is in a very precarious state.
And he's the first non-Tomino person to be handed the reins of one of these TV shows.
If he screws this up, he will be remembered as the man who killed Gundam. And probably a whole bunch of careers in the process.
And while we can't necessarily say that this is strictly about growing up, because a lot of people grow up and never hold positions of great responsibility, in the 90s, you still would have expected to experience one of these shifts, right? You might not become the section chief or the boss, but you would probably become a father, an uncle. You would move from these subordinate social positions to higher ones, just as a byproduct of getting older and going through, what we're seeing as very normal life changes.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens whether you resent it or not.
We've talked before about how the other members of the Shuffle Alliance represent different aspects of Imagawa's personality, but now I think they also represent his colleagues, the other people working on this show. When you're in a creative field, and really in most fields, your colleagues, they are your comrades, and they are also your rivals. If the people in the Shuffle Alliance are the other senior animators and writers and the other people on the production who are close to Imagawa in levels of seniority, he has to tell them what to do, but they are all experienced professionals, creatives with their own
strengths, weaknesses, personalities,
intentions for the project, ambitions. He has to corral all of them. He has to prove to them that he is worthy of being the director, the leader, the King of Hearts. And he doesn't feel ready for it. He feels like he needs to go off and hide in a cave for a couple of weeks, developing his skills, coming to terms with the fact that he's in this position whether he likes it or not.
And coming to terms with the fact that he may wish he could do it all himself, and then he shoulders all of that responsibility. He shoulders all of that burden without having to worry about other people. But that's not how most big things get done.
And I'm not saying this out of nothing. He has said in interviews that he felt deeply conflicted and inadequate being placed in this position of responsibility. But others at Sunrise who worked with both men have said that Domon and Master Asia reflect Imagawa's relationship with Tomino.
Oh, wow.
At least one other person on staff has said they think some of Master Asia's lines are based on things that Tomino said to Imagawa when they were working together on other projects.
Incredible.
I've never seen that confirmed by Imagawa himself, but this comes from somebody in the studio who knew both of them and was like, yeah, Master Asia just has a Tomino kind of feel to him.
I'm never going to be able to unsee it. Well, it certainly hasn't been a short talk back, but before we wrap up, I thought this was a really good-looking episode.
It was.
I loved the visuals of the Death Army appearing on the multitude of cameras while Rain is sleeping in the cockpit of the Shining Gundam. That was really cleverly done. The animation of Chibori's burning punch with the flaming water spout really stood out.
The new Death Army designs, the Air Force, the Death Birdies, and the Death Navy with their, what did we call them when we were watching James Bond? Henchman mobility devices?
Yeah, the Death Birdies look a bit like gliders, but in the shape of bird wings and bird tails. At first I thought moths, and then from a different angle, they looked to have tails much more like a bird's sort of wedge-shaped tail. And then the Navy, they look like submersibles. They look like small subs.
To me, they look like those, when you see divers traveling long distances, they like hold a propulsion device.
Yeah.
While the Shuffle Alliance have been training, the Death Army has been moving up the tech tree. They've been doing their research projects.
And yet every member of the Shuffle Alliance has like a specialty kind of, as they're all, you start with the big group and then one after another has to peel off as they get Rain closer and closer to Domon.
Mm-hmm.
But, with his pole arms, Saisaishi is well positioned to deal with a big crowd. With the rose bits, George is perfect for, a flock of death birdies. With his surfboard, Chiburi is ideal to take on the Death Navy.
But each of them gets overwhelmed, one after another, caught by surprise, or simply unable to face the masses of the enemy. It's a good structure for a fight. It's an exciting battle sequence in a way that G Gundam battles often are not.
Well, it lasts longer and is a bit more complex. Like, when it comes down to it, most G Gundam battles up until now have been fairly short and straightforward.
And just two Gundams, each of them using whatever their special technique is to slug it out.
And the Devil Gundam continues to look weirdly dinosaur-like with its multitude of long brontosaurus necks.
That just seem to be acting as spotlights for this big climactic showdown. I thought they looked more like, I don't know, worms or snakes, hydras. It's a pretty cool arena that they've created here for the final, for the end of episode cliffhanger, as the two attempt to use their powerful finger attacks at the same moment and explode. Cliffhanger. What's happened to them?
It feels very matter meets antimatter.
Exactly.
Darkness finger and shining finger.
Will they cancel each other out? Are they both dead? Is this the end of the show? Find out next week on the next exciting adventure of Mobile Fighter G Gundam.
As touched on in the talkback, this week I'm delving into martial arts philosophy. Specifically, the related concepts of acceptance of death and mental clarity or serenity, both of which Schwarzbruder brings up explicitly in this episode. He clearly considers them essential to Domon's development as a martial artist. For mental clarity or serenity, he uses the Yoji Jukugo, or four-character idiom, Meikyo Shisui. Used in both Japanese and Chinese, this idiom uses the metaphor of a polished mirror and still water to represent calm, serenity, and a mind that is free from evil thoughts. Although the Wiktionary entry for this idiom dates it to the Ming Dynasty, or the 14th to 17th centuries, its origins go back much further, to China's Warring States period and a foundational text of Taoist philosophy. Named for its putative author, the Zhuangzi ranks alongside the Tao Te Ching as both a classic of Chinese literature and a core text on Taoism. I say putative author because the text is broken into a series of chapters, and current scholarship seems to agree that while Zhuangzi wrote at least part of the text, likely what are called the inner chapters, additional chapters were probably added by other authors, including but not limited to his successors. If you have ever heard the butterfly dream parable of a man dreaming of being a butterfly who wakes and wonders whether he is actually now a butterfly dreaming of being a man, it is from this text. The text itself presents various questions of philosophy, morality, and virtue as discussions between famous figures, or as illustrative parables. Taoist influence in Japanese culture dates back at least to the 8th century, and possibly as early as the 5th, when various aspects of Chinese culture, such as their calendar and timekeeping systems, the system of elements, astronomy, were being imported, adopted, and adapted. But the Zhuangzi, or rather, a Song Dynasty commentary on it by Neo-Confucian scholar Ling Shiyi, was exceptionally popular and widely read in Edo-era Japan. Going back to the idiom itself, it is linked to two lines from the Zhuangzi's Inner Chapter, Book 5, rendered by the two translations I read as either symbols of integrity fulfilled or the seal of virtue complete. These two lines, as translated by James Legg and hosted online by the Chinese Text Project, are, "Men do not look into running water as a mirror, but into still water. It is only the still water that can arrest them all and keep them in contemplation of their real selves." And, "I have heard that when a mirror is bright, the dust does not rest on it. When dust rests on it, the mirror is not bright." Herbert A. Giles's 1889 translation, available on Wikisource, renders them as, "A man does not seek to see himself in running water, but in still water. For only what is itself still can instill stillness in others." And, "Now I have heard that if a mirror is perfectly bright, dust and dirt will not collect on it. That if they do, it is because the mirror was not bright." The first line, the one about still water, presents the idea that stillness, literal and figurative, physical and mental, is necessary for true contemplation and understanding of the self. In context, the line is a response to a question about why a particular man is esteemed by others, why people want to learn from him. The Giles translation goes on to explain, quote, "In a water level, the water is in a most perfect state of repose. Let that be your model. The water remains quietly within and does not overflow. It is from the cultivation of such harmony that virtue results. And if virtue takes no outward form, man will not be able to keep aloof from it. Mankind will be regenerated thereby, in the same way that evenness is imparted by the aid of water to surfaces, although the water is all the time closed up and does not overflow." To put it in plainer terms, if you've ever used a level to make sure you're hanging a picture straight, the water in the level shows you what evenness is and imparts evenness to the picture, even though the water never leaves the level or touches anything outside. Now imagine that the water is a metaphor for virtue, for stillness. Someone who has cultivated stillness in themselves is like the surface of still water, reflecting others back at themselves clearly and imparting that stillness on them. The second line about dust on a mirror I interpret as being more about this second aspect, the beneficial effects of spending time with virtuous people. The line immediately after it is, "When one dwells long with a man of ability and virtue, he comes to be without error," or, "He who associates for long with the wise will be without fault." Only the clean mirror, i.e. the wise person or the clear mind, can reflect one's true self back at them, and the contemplation thereof will lead them to wisdom and virtue. Essentially, that being in the presence of virtue propagates virtue in the self, and conversely, if the dust and dirt of various attachments and preoccupations accumulate on the mirror, then it was not bright or virtuous to begin with. Cough, cough, thinking of you, Master Asia. As a metaphor for clarity, serenity, and the absence of thought, Meikyo Shisui is similar to the concepts of Munen Muso or Mushin. David Hall's Encyclopedia of Japanese Martial Arts defines the term Munen Muso, which originates in Buddhism, as, quote, "without discriminative thought, formless." In a martial arts context, Munen Muso indicates an ideal state of mind for the warrior in combat. And he defines Mushin as an egoless state of mind. In the case of the warrior in combat, this term refers to acting without conscious thought, without fear or thought of victory, acting intuitively. Mushin is akin to the psychological flow state. We have to look to later texts to understand why these states of mind were considered so vital for warriors, and how they were applied to Japanese martial arts. In the Book of Five Rings, written circa 1645, famed samurai Miyamoto Musashi compiled his thoughts on what it meant to be a warrior in those days. I read the Victor Harris translation, and two lines stood out as relevant to this episode of G Gundam. Quote, "The way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death, and, both in fighting and in everyday life, you should be determined though calm. your spirit settled yet unbiased. Similar statements and ideas crop up in the Hagakure, which we mentioned in the talkback. Written circa 1716, it is credited to Yamamoto Tsunetomo, a former samurai who wished to commit ritual suicide upon the death of his lord, but was prevented from doing so by recent legal changes. Instead, he became a monk and retreated from the world. The Hagakure is thought to be based on his discussions with other former samurai. The following are from William Scott Wilson's translation. The way of the samurai is found in death. When it comes to either or, there is only the quick choice of death. If by setting one's heart right every morning and evening, one is able to live as though his body were already dead, he gains freedom in the way. As a human being, what is essential in terms of purpose and discipline? A mind that is pure and lacking complications. This is very difficult to discover. Once discovered, it is again difficult to keep in constant effect. There is nothing outside the thought of the immediate moment. And remember last week's episode when, I believe it was Raymond, who says to George that it isn't his opponent he needs to defeat, but himself? Well, another excerpt from the Hagakure in describing a transcendent, highest level of the study of swordsmanship reads, "This person is aware of the endlessness of entering deeply into a certain way, and never thinks of himself as having finished. It is said that Master Yagyu once remarked, 'I do not know the way to defeat others, but the way to defeat myself.'" The Demon's Sermon on the Martial Arts, a collection of martial arts parables presented as a discussion between wise and skilled demon martial artists and a human swordsman, also dates from the 18th century. Credited to samurai Isai Chozanshi, the version we have was adapted into a graphic novel by Sean Michael Wilson from a translation by William Scott Wilson. It is my favorite of the three texts, and it was very hard for me to narrow down which excerpts to share. The art of swordsmanship is not exclusively in making effort to defeat others. It is the art of dealing with the great transformation and being clear in the matter of life and death. When the mind is at peace and there is nothing to agitate it, the chi is also in harmony, follows the mind, and technique responds to circumstances naturally. Your intention must be absolutely exact, your form correct, and your chi must fill your entire body and be alive. You and the bow must become one. It seems as though your spirit fills heaven and earth. The distance between arrow and target is filled like an empty shell. Your spirit is settled. Your thoughts will not move. Your mind will assume no mind. You will be all the more your fundamental self. In swordsmanship, you face your opponent. You forget about life, forget about death, forget about your opponent, and forget about yourself. Your thoughts do not move, and you create no intentions. You are in a state of no mind, and practical application will have no obstacles. When you think and then do something, you obstruct your natural perception. Without thinking, without doing anything, move by following your natural perception, and your movement will have no form. And when you have no form, there is nothing in heaven and earth that could be your opponent. You can hear in these various excerpts a number of different threads coming together. The acceptance of death as a source of courage for the warrior, but also as something that enables the clear mind by forcing them to be in the moment. Much of Jianzu's writing focused on what he saw as false dichotomies, and the dichotomy of life and death was one. After all, if life and death are both natural and inevitable, what purpose does it serve to fear death? When one is entirely in the present, there is no future, and the past is irrelevant. What matter anger or vengeance, victory or defeat, when you will be dead in the next breath? If you are not fretting over the past or worrying about the future, your mind can be still and clear. If a warrior has truly accepted death, then they might move through life in this state, maintaining it at all times, without the literal sword over their head that is required to give Domon his epiphany. There's also significant influence from Buddhism, in particular Zen Buddhism, and the idea of oneness with all of creation. If one defeats the self or the ego, then one can feel that lack of separation and respond to whatever comes fluidly without conscious thought. This is not a lack of self, but in fact reveals the fundamental self. Though they describe the sense of having no opponent, this isn't literal. It's that when in this state of clarity, a fighter responds to their opponent as they would to a shifting breeze, a swinging branch. They are not thinking of their opponent as a person who wishes them harm. They are not thinking of this person as in opposition to themselves, because those thoughts are a distraction. Thinking about who they are, why they are doing this, what to do, how to respond, will always be slower than simply acting. That mental state of formlessness is what enables action without thought. Martial arts philosophy isn't preserved in amber. It continued to evolve and sprout new offshoots, just as the martial arts did. One text, the Bubishi, is a kind of compilation of knowledge considered relevant for the study of martial arts, encompassing history, philosophy, etiquette, Chinese medicinal herbs, the vital points on the body, and instruction on specific techniques, all in the Kung Fu tradition. Arriving in Okinawa from mainland China sometime in the mid to late 19th century, its author, as well as the date and place of its first publication, are unknown, and translator and commentator Patrick McCarthy describes the text as perplexing, written in classical Chinese, incorporating terms that are, quote, all but forgotten, and characters that have changed or are no longer in use. And yet it was hugely influential in what is now Japan, as the martial arts of the Ryukyu Islands mixed with those of mainland China and eventually developed into the multitude of karate styles that exist today. The founders of styles such as Isshin-ryu, Goju-ryu, and Shotokan all studied the Bubishi and incorporated what they learned into their own arts. McCarthy points out that a significant portion of Karate-do Kyohan by Funakoshi Gichin, considered the founder of modern karate and creator of the Shotokan style, is taken directly from the Bubishi. In Karate-do Kyohan, of which I read Oshima Tsutomu's translation, Funakoshi explicitly links the first character of karate, kara, which means sky or empty, to the concept of formlessness. Quote, in a fundamental way, the form of the universe is emptiness, and thus emptiness is form itself. The kara of Karate-do has this meaning. Funakoshi emphasized that the ideal practice of Karate-do trains the mind as much as the body, and in his 20 precepts of Karate-do includes the importance of self-knowledge and the necessity of cultivating both focus, described as the unity of mind and body, and the ability to free the mind of conscious thought. In Mario McKenna's translation, neither a lotus nor well-polished crystal can be stained with mud, even if it is placed in it. So let your mind be like that of the lotus and crystal. If you constantly hang on to conscious thought, you cannot be free. He also draws karate's lineage through what he calls Okinawa-te, to Kung Fu, to the founder of Zen Buddhism, Daruma, also known as Bodhidharma himself, who is described as creating Kung Fu for the development of the mind and the body. Quote, although the way of Buddha is preached for the soul, the body and the soul are inseparable. As I look at you now, I think it likely you will not complete your training because of your exhaustion. For this reason, I shall give you a method by which you can develop your physical strength enough to enable yourselves to attain the essence of the way of Buddha. Nishiyama Hidetaka and Richard C. Brown, both of the Japan Karate Association, wrote in their 1959 book, Karate, the Art of Empty Hand Fighting, Mizu no kokoro, a mind like water, refers to the need to make the mind calm like the surface of undisturbed water. To carry the symbolism further, smooth water reflects accurately the image of all objects within its range. And if the mind is kept in this state, apprehension of the opponent's movements, both psychological and physical, will be both immediate and accurate, and one's responses, both defensive and offensive, will be appropriate and adequate. On the other hand, if the surface of the water is disturbed, the image it reflects will be distorted. Or, by analogy, if the mind is preoccupied with thoughts of attack or defense, it will not apprehend the opponent's intentions. Nishiyama and Brown also referenced the same swordmaster, Yagyu, who was mentioned in the Demon's Sermon on the Martial Arts. Of course, karate is just one example, but it's the martial art I have the most experience with and the one we have the most books about. And as you may have noticed, the philosophical concepts are broadly applicable to any martial art rather than being specific to any one weapon or style. In the older texts, they are often talking about swordsmanship or archery. In newer texts, unarmed combat. I don't know whether Imagawa or anyone else on the writing team, for that matter, practiced martial art or had done so when they were younger, but that would hardly be essential. These elements of martial arts philosophy crop up in everything from manga and anime to film and TV, novels to self-help books. In the Demon's Sermon on the martial arts are described as the mysterious function of the very nature of the essence of the mind. But that's a bit deep when someone is just starting out, and so all training begins with a focus on technique and on the body. Technique is cultivated by means of chi, and chi uses the mind as a vehicle to put form into use. The highest principles are contained within techniques and follow the self-nature of the utensil. As you become skillful in technique, chi harmonizes. When this has completely penetrated the mind and no more doubts remain, technique and principle become one. Chi is under control, your spirit is settled, and practical application is completely unobstructed. If your technique has not become mature, chi will not become harmonized and form will not follow. When the mind and form become two, you will be unable to act with freedom. Towards the end of the Demon's Sermon, there is a particular favorite parable of ours, where a famed mouser is giving fighting advice to other cats. This cat finishes its speech saying, "A teacher can only transmit a technique or enlighten you to a principle, but receiving the truth of the matter is something within yourself." Domon has been focused on technique, but his technique is basically fine. What Schwartz is trying to show him, or get him to realize, is that it's his mind that needs to be put right. This can all sound very abstract, very woo, even self-aggrandizing or silly, when you think about it being in service to punching, kicking, throwing, and slashing with swords. But as someone who practiced several different martial arts for about a decade, it has a lot of resonance for me because I have experienced the truth of it. It happened just once in all of my years of practicing karate, and it was brief. But I was sparring, I believe with Tom, and had a moment when my mind went clear and empty. Time felt like it slowed down, and my own body moved and reacted without any conscious thought. I blocked an attack and landed a good clean hit without any sense of struggle or effort. It felt like magic, and probably lasted all of 3 seconds. It couldn't have happened if I hadn't been training my body and techniques, but it was my first glimpse of what the next step was, the level beyond, the special something that makes the physical skills like strength, speed, agility, stamina, and the technical skills, the body mechanics of the techniques themselves, practiced so many times that they become a single technique instead of a series of movements, and the knowledge of what counters to use when, of what techniques to use against a larger opponent or one with longer reach. It takes all of that and makes it more than the sum of their parts. The thing that lets Domon block an attack from a Gundam with a rusty old sword.
Incidentally, this isn't G Gundam related, but if you watch a fair amount of anime, you will probably encounter something along the lines of a character sensing the presence of another character because they can feel their killing intent, or vice versa, a character who is able to suppress their killing intent in order not to be detected. That's what the parable of the old mouser is about. The old cat is able to catch a particularly wily rat because he approaches with no killing intent, and so the rat doesn't see him as a threat.
And this is another one of those things that can sound very woo, but then if you have animals in your life, think about how any sort of animal, whether a wild animal or a pet, seems to notice when you're watching it. They feel something. They feel or sense that they are being looked at. They pick up on all of these little cues, probably subconsciously, that alert them to intent and attention. Did you ever feel the thing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I trained
much longer than I did.
I trained much longer than you did. More intensively, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And I sparred a lot more often. And so I felt it. I wouldn't say regularly, but more times than I could count on my fingers, at least.
The way Funakoshi talks about the mental side of karate, it sounds like he really didn't expect people to feel that or start tapping into that until they'd been doing it for like 10 or 20 years. Next week for MSB, Tom and I will be attending Anime NYC and will not be able to publish a full episode. So we have decided to release one of our previously patron-only bonuses to the public feed. When we return to coverage of G Gundam on MSB episode 11.22, Last Stand at Angel Falls, we'll research and discuss G Gundam episode 22 and Final Battle, but it's only episode 22. Maps, charts, diagrams. Only the smoothest jazz. You can tell their relationship is serious because they're sharing a Gundam. Salmon Ladder. Battle Hymn of the Shuffle Alliance. Get me to the finals on time. Last one out, turn off the light. And not so final after all. Ready? Go!
Mobile Suit Breakdown is written, recorded, and produced by us, Tom and Nina, in scenic New York City, within the ancestral and unceded land of the Lenape people, and made possible by listeners like you. The opening track is Wasp by Misha Dioxin, the closing music is Long Way Home by Spinning Ratio, and the recap music is Window by 1000 Hands. You can find links to the sources for our research, the music used in the episode, additional information about the Lenape people, and more in the show notes on our website, GundamPodcast.com. You can get in touch with us by email at hosts@GundamPodcast.com. If you'd like to support the show, please tell your friends about us, leave us a nice review wherever you listen to podcasts, or if you'd like to support us financially, you can do so at GundamPodcast.com/Patreon. Or look for other ways to support the show at GundamPodcast.com/support. Most of all, thank you for listening. Are you ready to come down to Neo New York and throw hands over your Gundam opinions? No? Well, that's because you lack conviction. Or maybe you just haven't heard an opinion worth fighting over yet. So how about this one, inspired by Irradiate Space? If every G Gundam episode is going to be set in a different genre, then Imagawa has a moral obligation to give us a musical episode. Anything less than that is pure cowardice. And since Imagawa isn't a coward, I'm just going to sit back and wait patiently until I hear the light, sweet tenor of Argo Golski's singing voice. A person had better be ready to fight, carrying opinions like that one around. I don't believe in tone, and I think anyone trying to tell me that I'm off key is being very prejudiced against me.
I mean, yes.
Being very mean and nasty and cruel.
I love you, but you have very little sense of rhythm and almost none of, key.
Correct. True. But it's not my fault. I was born that way.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
They tried to teach me, but I would not learn.
You could not learn, is your contention.
That would be my contention, yes. I contend it.
Not that you refused, but that you are incapable.
I tried to play music for many years.
That sounds painful for everyone involved.
Yes. Yes. Very, and ultimately very disappointing. It wouldn't be the only time that Pokemon has referenced Gundam.
Oh?
Simply look at the Pokemon Orbital.
Fair.
The Hagakure is a really interesting text in this context Text context is annoying.
We're cutting this, right? I noticed you failed to answer.
We'll see.
No. Do not give the internet your full government.